Alright everyone, welcome back again to more Witch on the Holy Night. I'm actually going to keep this intro a little short this time because if anything, I'm fairly excited to continue onwards. So I hope you all join me and see how the chapter continues on. And if anything else, thank you all for the love and support. Hope you all continue to enjoy. And let's do this. Alright everyone, and we are back. Both of them scoffed angrily and put away their weapons. They both knew better than to argue with Soujuurou, the only one cleaning with a garbage bag in hand.
それで何しに来たんだ飛び丸。君はあったかい焼却炉の前で永遠に火の管理をすると豪語していたんじゃなかったっけ？
A harsh comment. Apparently even Soujuurou had a slight taste for drama.
なんてこった。善良な生徒ですら俺をそんな目で見るのか。
Tobimaru seemed sad at Soujurou's observation. But as long as Tobimaru continued to claim he was helping the girls clean by doing nothing more than standing in front of a pile of burning leaves, Soujuurou found it hard to sympathize.
いいから要件を言えよ。殿下と違って俺らは暇じゃねえんだ。
ああ、そうかよ。Soujuurou、そろそろ小休止だ。向こうで温まろうよ。
お？なんだブレイクかよ。話せるじゃん殿下。
ああ、てめえは除外に決まってんだろ。特権は功労者にのみ与えられるもんだ。焼却炉の前に来たけりゃそれ相応の貢ぎ物を持ってきやがれ。具体的に言うとリアカー1台分のゴミ袋な。
ひっでえ、生徒会応募。
Kinomi's complaints naturally fell on deaf ears. Tobimaru had been selected to lead the cleaning operation, and his word was final. If Kinomi were to continue to push his buttons, he knew he would be on cleaning duty tomorrow and the next day too.
さあ、行くぞ。誰の趣味か知らねえが、なぜか知る子の感が山ほどあってな。中華まんの一つでもあった方が気が利くってもんなんだがね。あれか？遭難用のチョコレートみたいなもんか？ったく、あいつの考えは未だにわかんねえな。
Soujuurou reassured Tobimaru by saying that he thought the food would do just fine for everyone.
なんだよ。行かねえのか、Soujuurou。
ああ、自分はここに残るよ。旦なら木の実の言うように葉を燃やせばいい。そこに池もある。火の始末なら安心だ。
This was clearly for Kinomi's benefit. Tobimaru furrowed his brow while Kinomi shivered from the cold.
俺は今友情ってもんを実感している。すげえな。真心って本当にあったんだ。
I like that. Is that a glimmer of friendship?
くそ、待ってろしずき。今赤羽たちから芋を奪ってくる。
Perhaps shy to show his true feelings, Kinomi ran off to the neighboring group.
な、予想はしてたけどな。ほらよ。
Tobimaru pulled out a hot can from his jersey pocket, scratching his head in exacerbation. He pulled out 3 in all, one from each jersey pocket and one from his pants pocket.
さっさと焚き火の用意をしようぜ。俺もこっちで休むことにするわ。
付き合いがいいのはお互い様だな。
Soujuurou quickly prepared the leaves for the fire, carefully gathering them up for them to burn neatly.
慣れてるな。
マッチがあるから楽なんだ。
Soujuurou crouched down in front of the burning leaves and warmed his hands near the flames. Even though he showed no signs of being cold, underneath it all, Soujuurou was cold too. He gazed into the fire as the smoke rose from the pile of leaves, as if remembering the good times from his past. Tobimaru felt a touch of concern as he looked at Soujuurou. He saw within him homesickness and retrospection. He also saw a dark shadow looming over him like a stranger in a foreign land without a home.
元気ねえな、Soujuurou。
まあね、少し疲れてる。
悩み事なら相談に乗るぜ。気が向いたら話してくれ。
Tobimaru continued speaking with the pull tab from the can of sweet red bean soup still around his index finger. Soujuurou was focused on the fire.
そういえばな、お前が学校休んでる時、青崎に殴られたぜ。なんでも俺は大ボラ吹きだそうだ。
すごいな。大抜擢じゃないか。
Sometimes Soujuurou would reply incoherently like this. Tobimaru chalked it up to cultural differences.
なあ、青崎とはどうなってんだ？テスト前は駅まで一緒に帰ってただろ？うまくいってんのか、あれから。
It was obvious to everyone that was far from the case, yet Tobimaru asked anyway.
ああ、今は一緒に住んでるよ。
He said that so as a matter of fact. Soujuurou went with the truthful, blunt response.
ああ、そうか、一緒と来たか。
Tobimaru tried to laugh off Soujurou's all-too-casual confession, however.
はっ、一緒に住んでるぞ。
どうした飛丸？火でも飛んだか？
飛んでねえし、それより怖え。おい、今の聞き捨てならねえたわごとは本当の話か？
Soujuurou protested Tobimaru's reply with silence.
その余裕、マジか。女に興味なさそうな顔してて、やることやってんじゃねえかてめえ。
Tobimaru had always felt that he and Soujuurou were an equal match strength-wise, but for some reason he could not shake the feeling that Soujuurou was now his superior in the brain department. Soujuurou cast a rare angry glare in Tobimaru's direction.
こっちこそ聞き捨てならない。なんだ、その女に興味はないってのは。
Soujuurou seemed genuinely angry, and his voice was icy. This uncharacteristic level of anger from Soujuurou was enough to get Tobimaru to back down.
いや、悪い。そんな雰囲気あったんだよ、お前さんは。それは謝る。けどよ、青崎と一緒に住んでるってどういうことだ？いくらなんでも一足飛びすぎだろ。
別に君が期待しているようなことはない。彼女が住んでいるところの部屋を借りることになっただけだ。屋根の裏にある部屋なんだけど、板張りで山小屋を思い出すんで気に入ってる。
Tobimaru did not bat an eyelid at hearing that Soujuurou now lived in an attic and continued his questioning.
屋敷ってあの久遠寺の屋敷か？それこそまさかだぜ。宗十郎、お前一体どんな手品を使いやがった？
Honestly, more like unlucky.
お、飛丸こそあの家を知ってるのか？
そりゃな。これでも築地家期待の跡取り候補だぜ、俺は。久遠寺グループのご令嬢が住んでる屋敷ぐらいは知ってるさ。霊園女学院の2年生だろ、確か。
久遠寺何？
Soujuurou was looking more confused than ever, so Tobimaru reluctantly explained everything as simply as he could so Soujuurou could understand.
久遠寺グループつうか財団だな。平たく言えば一族全部がお金持ちで仲良く会社を経営してる連中だと思えばいい。複合企業とまではいかないが輸出業じゃかなりのもんだ。ホームグラウンドは国外で先代の会長の英国びいきがたたって一時期は沈みかけてたんだが、5年くらい前かね、本拠地をこっちに移してからはご存知の通りだ。会長が息子に移ってからはきちんと持ち直して今や町の名士だろ。ここでも久遠寺の名前はそこかしこで目に入る。この学校の建て直し予算の半分は連中からだしな。
Despite the oversimplified explanation, Soujuurou still seemed to not be getting it. With that, Tobimaru decided to give up on trying to explain.
あれだ。想像もできない金持ちってこと。宗の字が働いてる喫茶店だって久遠寺が向こうから持ってきたブランドだぜ。今じゃ全国チェーンになっちまったがな。
つまりすごく偉いんだね。おかしいな。ならなんであんなに倹約してるんだろ
Sojiro mumbled incoherently to himself. Tobimaru looked at him with a complex expression on his face, somewhere between envy and heartfelt sympathy.
しかしうまいことやったな宗十郎。それで本当のところはどうなんだ。男と女が同じ屋根の下にいればやることは一つだろ。
案外古いな飛丸も。
抜かせ。そのあたりをごまかしてたら男なんざやってらんねえ。
そりゃごもっとも。実を言うと正直な話。
Though Sojiro and Aoko were living together, there was absolutely no chemistry between them. Though that was not to say that living in such close quarters as they did, unintended mishaps did not occur from time to time. But even still,
驚くぐらいそういうことにはなってない。あの屋敷すごく広いし。
everyone was often busy with their own affairs, so there was no opportunity for that sort of thing to happen.
そもそもだな。もし飛丸だったら下宿先が同じってことだけで青崎に言い寄る気になるかい？
いやならねえなそりゃ。
Tobimaru nodded intently, as if he was thinking back over his many ex-relationships.
いや健全だな。
ああ、健全だろ。
Sojiro gave no more than a quick affirmation to Tobimaru's despondent murmur. He was doing fine. But besides his physical health, it was surely Sojiro's personality that enabled him to maintain any semblance of peace dealing with both Aoko and Alice while living in that mansion.
でもそれとは別の話で青崎には頭が上がらないんだ。彼女にはもう返せない借りがあってさ。
Sojiro's eyes turned slightly serious as he stared into the fire. Tobimaru felt that there was more to those words than what Sojiro was letting on.
もう返せない借りだ。
Sojiro merely nodded in silence at Tobimaru's inquisitive acknowledgement. And just then, a strange scream pierced through the still silence of the wood like a knife.
なんか聞こえたな。
ああ、木の実だ。
Sojiro had already stood up before he responded. He bolted to the frozen pond, broke the ice with his broom, scooped up some of the frigid water in a bucket, and threw it on the fire in no less than 10 seconds. Then he immediately ran off into the depths of the woods from where he heard the scream. Tobimaru followed after him in panicked confusion.
飛丸、この先に何かあるのか？
確か旧校舎が残ってるはずだ。
他には野犬の住処とかそういう嫌な話は？
はあ？いやいるとしても鹿かウサギじゃねえか。
なら怖がることもないか。急ごう飛丸。
Perhaps because of his time spent growing up in the mountains, Sojiro quickly sprinted over the slippery dead leaves. Tobimaru was not particularly cautious himself, but nevertheless, he could not keep up with Sojiro in here. Before long, Sojiro found himself running alone. When piles of leaves blocked the natural trail, he would sometimes knock them away with both hands and sometimes expertly slip through them. It was clear that he was used to dealing with this level of nature. After a few minutes, Sojiro arrived at a clearing. The wall of trees had ended. It was an obviously man-made clearing here on the mountainside. In the distance was what looked like an old wooden school building. It was a small, aesthetically pleasing building no larger than an elementary school, lost in the depths of winter wilderness.
Kinomi!
Kinomi stood alone on the old school ground.
は？なんでしずきまで追いかけてきたん？
A sour expression came over Sojiro's face as Kinomi tilted his head in confusion.
そっちこそどうしたんだ？変な声上げて。
声？いやそりゃガキ相手に怒鳴ったけどよ。ほらあのガキだよ。芋持ってるだろ。であ中に逃げ込みやがった。
Kinomi pointed resentfully toward the old school building. There was indeed somebody standing at the entrance of the building, just over 300 feet in the distance.
たくこんな上まで来やがって。いつから子供の遊び場になってんだここ。
Kinomi shrugged his shoulders to signal how little he cared what the young children did with their time. This place was deep in the woods, but it was not particularly dangerous. Soujuurou had run through the woods to get here, but there was also a paved road leading to this spot from outside the woods too. Kinomi apparently followed that road to get here.
ん？子供？
Soujuurou squinted.
ああ、金髪なんでさっきはちょっと驚いたけどな。外国人の子供ってなんか怖いだろ？
It was indeed quite rare to see a foreigner in a provincial town such as Misaki. Soujuurou had never ever seen a foreigner in person, which made the whole thing even more mysterious.
それで、木の実はなんでここまで？
いや、赤羽たちがよ、ガキに食料奪われたって言うからここまで追いかけてきたんだ。そういうことだから、二人がかりであのお子様とっちめようぜ。
怖いことを考えるな、木の実は。
Soujuurou could not find it in him to agree with his plan. It seemed unfair to team up against a little kid.
いいから帰ろう。あの子こっちを睨んでるじゃないか。それに飛び丸にこんなところ見られたら、冬休み中ずっと山の掃除で終わることになるぞ。
Soujuurou took Kinomi by the shoulders and began leading him back to the path he came from. Kinomi cast one last gaze at the old school building before reluctantly following. Just then, Tobimaru appeared, panting and out of breath.
早いな、宗十郎。
Tobimaru could hardly catch his breath. He arrived about 3 minutes behind Soujuurou despite having a good set of legs on him.
それでどうした？木の実、無事か？
はあ？無事も何も殿下こそどったん。
Kinomi seemed perplexed at Tobimaru's first ever display of concern for him.
なんだそりゃ。てめえ、あれだけの大声を上げておいて、しらばっくれる気か？上で何かあったんだろうが。
すまない。こっちの早とちりだった。飛び丸は知らないだろうけど、木の実は時々、バイト先でも規制を上げる癖があるんだ。
Kinomi looked disapproving as Soujuurou nonchalantly shared this insight. This was the first he had ever heard of it.
怪しいな。またよからぬことでも企んでるんじゃねえか、そこの。
ないよ。戻って掃除の続きをするぞ、飛び丸。
Soujuurou pat Tobimaru on the shoulder a couple of times and started walking. Tobimaru cast a doubtful glare in his direction as he meandered off. He had a feeling that Soujuurou was covering for Kinomi somehow.
まさか、旧校舎に火なんてつけてないだろうな。
誰もしないよ、そんなことは。
Soujuurou kept walking and did not even look back at Tobimaru as he spoke. Tobimaru and Kinomi tilted their heads in confusion as they reluctantly followed the unusually aggressive Soujuurou back to their cleaning spot. And so the special winter cleaning team's activities ended uneventfully. The time was 3 in the afternoon. Upon departing, Kinomi and his crew invited Soujuurou to come hang out with them, but he declined politely due to his job that evening. He had about 2 hours until his shift began. Not quite enough time to do anything fun, but just enough time to have to fill it with something. Soujuurou thought about relaxing in a park somewhere, but quickly changed his mind after remembering how cold it was even in the city. Not to forget that Aoko handed him those pills in the morning. Aoko was absolutely correct in her prediction. Heading back to the mansion now would just be a waste of time. There was no reason for him to return to the mansion until after his shift at work. Still, Soujuurou found himself on the way back anyway. Having grown up deep in the mountains, a little 2-hour walk was really no sweat off his back. Misaki was one of the more quiet residential areas in Misaki City. The only thing that really stood out here was Shiroi Nizuka. It was a hill that led directly into the woods. The silhouette of the mountain served as a backdrop to suburbia, silently overshadowing the small human actions of the people who lived there. Even in the modern day of technological progress, the people here were always careful to pay reverence to the nature around them. If that mansion were a shrine, it would not be a haunted house, but a famous tourist attraction.
というより、今更気づいたけど。
The houses around Shiroi Nizuka were all magnificent. Soujuurou understood as he looked from the bottom of his hill. Sojiro understood as he looked from the bottom of this hill where the rest of the town lived at the roof of the mansion tucked away in the woods. He understood what Tobimaro was talking about how the Kuonji family had owned that mansion, might be the richest people in town.
その割に家賃を取るところを見ると、やっぱり嫌われていると見るべきか。
Sojiro began walking towards the mansion with such thoughts simmering in his mind. The feeling of the hard asphalt beneath his feet instead of soft dirt felt lonely and isolating. He walked along the paved road for 10 minutes or so before reaching the iron fence of the wood. Beyond this fence was the private property of the Kuonji family. It was bereft of any awkward no trespassing signs. The tall, overbearing iron fence was more than enough to remind visitors that they were unwelcome there. Sojiro casually pushed on the iron gate. Only 2 days had passed since the end of the final exams, and he already seemed more than comfortable with the idea of entering this wood alone. The path to the mansion from inside the wood curved and bent like a snake. It took about 15 minutes to reach the mansion on this path. He could have chosen to ignore the long incline and travel in a straight line through the wood, but he would have expended significantly more energy in doing so. No, using the wooden path was the sensible option, barring an emergency. Upon entering the foyer, Sojiro heard a conversation coming from the drawing room. It was no doubt Aoko and Alice. Sojiro decided to join them. Ever since final exams had ended, Aoko and Alice had switched from their daily routine to a more irregular schedule. Aoko would disappear into Alice's room in the west wing of the mansion for a while, where she would remain. And Alice would go into Aoko's room, not to be seen again. Or they would vanish into the corridors leading around to the rear of the mansion doing who knows what, where Sojiro was most certainly not allowed to enter. Not that he was interested in what they were doing, since Aoko and Alice did not seem to want to include him either, serving both parties nicely. For the time being, the Kuonji estate was pretty peaceful.
ただいま。
Sojiro quietly opened the door to the drawing room. Even though they tried not to be involved in each other's businesses, Sojiro made it a habit to greet them. The two girls sat across from him on the sofa. On the table in front of them was a large, extravagantly decorated mirror. Aoko was dressed for comfort, wearing jeans instead of her usual skirt. In stark contrast, Alice was dressed in her usual all black. Even though the break from school was well underway, the witch still insisted on wearing black. As Aoko had explained, it was probably because it was too much effort for Alice to wear anything else. Sojiro's thought was that he would like to see her wear something different. Aoko and Alice seemed to be in the middle of some sort of dispute. The air in the drawing room was tense. They both ignored his greeting. Alice only briefly looked up at him.
じゃあ、東川の視点は？あそこの柱は白色だし、そう簡単には奪われないでしょ？
ええ。今のところ東川は侵食されていないけど、一つ隣の鈴穂の視点が消された以上、楽観はできないわ。残りの割り出しは今までより早くなる。
そっか。一個釣れれば、あとは芋づる式だもんね。反省したわ。甘く見てたのはこっちの方だった。ここからは、1週間単位の攻防になるわね。
The two continued their heated discussion from opposite sides of the table. Aoko neglected to even glance up at Sojiro. Sojiro sensed that she wanted to concentrate on the discussion at hand.
でも解せないな。あの夜に人形を出してくるタイミングといい、隠し方だけは一級品なうちの視点を短期間で特定することといい、こいつ、まず間違いなく市内にアジトを敷いてるわよね。なのに、なんで結界に異常がないんだろう。三崎市一帯の索敵網は、もう100年近く破られたことがないのに。
Aoko bit her nails nervously while Alice nodded along. It seemed as though she was wondering the same thing.
母も、ここの結界には触れなかった。三崎の結界をかいくぐるには、あなたのおじいさんか、それ以上の技量を持つ魔術師でないと難しい。けど、それほどの魔術師なら逆に、気配は隠しきれない。何か特殊な音響法かもしれないわね。 ここ数年、新しいサークルの話は聞かないけど。
何？シャーウッドの森？メイキングなら以前、アリスの霧が粉砕したじゃない。あれ以上の怨霊があるっていうの？
例えばの話よ。今回の相手は、こちら以上の技量を持っているか、こちらの知らない技術を持っているか。どちらにせよ、評価を改めるべきね。私たち、気づかないうちに追い詰められているのかも。
The two fell silent. Soujuurou, after some internal deliberation, decided to break the silence.
や、ただいま。
Aoko finally looked up at him in response to his hesitant declaration.
いいからお風呂に入ってきたら？汚れてるわよ、宗十郎。
And with that, Aoko returned her gaze to the mirror. Alice briefly looked up at Soujuurou again before also returning her gaze to the mirror. Perhaps feeling at least somewhat satisfied that his greeting was acknowledged, Soujuurou left the drawing room and closed the door behind him. Aoko was right. His clothes were a little soiled.
そうだな。もったいないけど、確かに。
Soujuurou returned to his room, thinking that a bath might actually feel pretty nice in this cold weather, despite not really having broken his sweat at all during the day. He climbed the stairs from the foyer and up the second flight into the attic. Unlike the other rooms in the mansion, this one had no frills to its decor. It was a little cumbersome to use as a living space, but comfortable enough for Soujuurou. Everywhere else in the mansion was a little too gaudy for his tastes. As far as shelter and a place to sleep went, Soujuurou was more than satisfied with his accommodations. There was no electricity in the attic. The only light was that which crept in from the small skylight. Not that Soujuurou minded. He was more accustomed to living without electricity than living with it. With only the faint winter light to guide him, he readied a change of clothes and a towel before heading down to the foyer. Despite the magnificent size of the mansion, there was only one bath in the whole building, and not a particularly large one at that. Whoever the architect was, he or she must not have thought a bath to be so important, or perhaps they were not the bath type. Soujuurou descended to the foyer and made his way to the back of the stairs. He knocked on the door to the bath. As expected, there was no answer from the other side. The only other two occupants of the mansion were still talking in the drawing room. After confirming it was unoccupied, Soujuurou quietly entered the bathroom. Even though Soujuurou was not aware of it himself, as was common for him, the only hobby he had acquired since coming down from the mountain path was taking a nice relaxing bath. Soujuurou had left, but the two girls were still locked in their heated discussion. Needless to say, the topic of their conversation was still that of the outsider mage who had appeared in Misaki City last month. This was, after all, the problem that had occupied their time before this whole situation with Soujuurou arose, dealing with and eliminating the interloper who had set his or her sights on their territory.
今まではおとりにばっかり食いついてたから甘く見てたけど、それも計算づくだったのかしらね。こっちが油断してる隙に本命を一つ奪われた。この相手との戦いはこれからが本番ってことか。
The situation was growing more dire by the day. Until only a couple of days ago, the enemy had limited themselves to small skirmishes, but now they had shifted to a full-on offensive. Aoko had two major bounded fields she used for defense. One, the larger of the two, was placed around Misaki City to detect magical energy and magecraft. This was used to observe and monitor visitors from outside the city, and was initially set up by Alizaki's ancestors, the administrators of this territory, and had no way to be removed. The other was set up to energize and manage ley lines from within the territory. The 5 sigils carved into the earth made up a standard square-type array, protecting all that lay within its bounds. After some manipulation of the mana flow, the power within was directed to accumulate at the Kuronji estate. That is to say, the bounded field existed to monopolize the magical energy within Misaki City. Alright guys, I'm going to end the video here for today. Thank you all for watching. When we come back, we'll continue on in the next one.